This is also a time of change for my family.
The decision did not arrive with shouting. It arrived with silence. Behind palace doors, King Charles read the final confirmation of a protocol breach that had gone too far, and by the time he lifted his eyes from the page, the future of Queen Camilla's public role had changed. One sentence cut through the room like a blade. Camilla was to be removed from upcoming state events. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles held the confirmation file as if it carried more than paper. He had seen palace disputes before. But this was different, because the state calendar, the official list of royal events involving foreign guests, national ceremonies, and formal duties, was being prepared. Camilla was meant to stand beside him. She was meant to represent stability. Now the king had to decide whether stability could survive if the queen consort herself had broken the rules meant to protect it. The monarch read the file once. Then he read it again. No one in the room rushed him. Every aide understood the weight of the words in front of him. The confirmed breach was clear. During a private diplomatic reception, Camilla had spoken out of order and overruled an established seating and greeting arrangement without approval. Protocol, in plain terms, means the royal rulebook for who speaks, where people stand, who greets whom first, and how the crown shows respect without creating confusion. To break it before foreign guests, senior courtiers and family members was something else entirely. Camilla expected protection when the news reached her. She did not expect mercy exactly, but she expected Charles to soften the blow, to fold the mistake into private silence, to shield her from public damage. Instead, she heard that her name had been removed from upcoming state events. The queen consort did not collapse. She did not plead. She sat still, wounded by the calmness of it, because calm made the punishment feel final. Charles placed the file flat on the table and said nothing. That silence became its own command. The palace had been waiting for a signal, and now it had one. The king was not simply correcting an error. He was drawing a line between marriage and monarchy, between the woman he had defended for years and the crown he could not allow to look weak. But before Camilla could understand the full weight of what had been taken from her, the people closest to the throne began to realize this decision would wound far more than one woman. Every royal crisis has names behind it. Not just titles, not just duties, people. Charles was not only a king protecting the institution, he was a husband forced to discipline the woman beside him. Camilla was not only a consort losing state privileges, she was a wife hearing a door close in her own home. And William was watching carefully, because every choice now shaped the monarchy he would inherit. Charles stood near the window after the order was given, his hand resting on the back of a chair, as though the wood itself was keeping him steady. The king had faced pressure before, but this cut deeper because it came from inside his own marriage. Constitutional discipline, meaning the duty of a monarch to protect the rules and stability of the crown above personal feeling, now demanded something painful from him. If he softened the decision for Camilla, every courtier would know emotion had overruled order. If he held firm, his own household would feel the wound first. Camilla sat in another room, pale with humiliation, while an aide quietly removed her name from the state attendance list. A state attendance list is the formal plan showing which royals appear at important national and diplomatic events, and losing a place on it meant more than missing a ceremony. It meant her visibility had been reduced. It meant her influence had been questioned. The queen consort had spent years enduring criticism, waiting for acceptance, standing beside Charles through storms that would have broken weaker people. Now the palace rules she thought she had survived were strong enough to strip her power overnight. William understood the meaning before anyone had to explain it. The prince did not celebrate Camilla's fall, but he did not rush to defend her either. He saw the breach as proof that emotional entitlement could not be allowed to bend institutional order. The future king knew one dangerous exception could become a future weakness, and he had spent too long watching private choices become public damage. His silence was not coldness. It was calculation. And that made Catherine uneasy. Catherine felt the temperature of the family change. She noticed how carefully William chose his words, how Charles avoided Camilla's eyes, how the queen consort held herself as if pride was the only thing still untouched. Catherine understood that this was not just a scheduling matter. It was a family turning inward, each person measuring loyalty against duty. She wanted calm, but calm was already slipping away. Camilla believed no one would dare challenge her in the moment that started it all. Charles knew that belief had become the real danger. William sensed the same truth with quiet force. And that moment, buried beneath polished ceremony and forced smiles, was the spark everyone later pointed to as the beginning of the collapse. The breach did not come from nowhere. It began during a private diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace, when Camilla crossed a line that palace staff knew existed, but rarely spoke about aloud. One chair was moved. One greeting order was changed. One guest was redirected without approval. In a monarchy built on invisible rules, that was enough to turn a ceremony into a warning. Camilla entered that evening believing her place was secure. She had stood beside Charles through years of judgment, and she had learned how power often lived in the smallest details. A private diplomatic reception is a formal palace gathering where royals meet foreign guests away from large public crowds, and every greeting, seat, and pause carries meaning because it shows rank, respect, and control. That night mattered because foreign dignitaries were present, and because Charles had already approved a greeting order that placed another senior royal representative ahead of the Queen Consort. Camilla saw the arrangement as a slight. She did not say it loudly. She did not need to. The Queen Consort leaned toward a staff member and said, "Move it now." The aide froze, because changing the official greeting order without permission meant more than moving people through a room. It meant altering the message the crown was sending. The staff member glanced toward Charles's private secretary, the senior official who manages the monarch's daily decisions and protects palace procedure. That glance was enough to expose the danger. Charles noticed. Across the room, the king saw the hesitation, the shifted chair, the guest being redirected, and something in his face changed. He did not interrupt the reception. He did not embarrass Camilla in front of the dignitaries. The monarch understood that one public correction could turn a breach into a spectacle, so he waited. And that restraint mattered, because it showed every watching courtier that Charles was not unaware. He was choosing the moment of judgment. Camilla felt the challenge the instant a senior courtier reversed her instruction. The Queen Consort held her expression, but humiliation moved beneath the surface. She had expected obedience, not resistance. She had expected the room to bend quietly around her will, the way it often had before. Instead, the staff followed Charles's approved order. That single reversal cut deeper than any spoken rebuke, because it told Camilla that her influence had limits. The incident entered the internal event report before the night ended. That report, a written palace record used to log problems after official functions, made the breach impossible to bury as confusion or gossip. Charles could forgive a mistake in private. The king could not ignore a documented disruption witnessed by guests, courtiers, and family. Camilla still believed the storm could be contained. Charles knew it could not. Because what happened after the reception was no longer about chairs, greetings, or ceremony. It became a direct test of whether Camilla believed Charles would ever truly say no to her. When Charles finally faced Camilla, there were no officials between them, no polished smiles, and no carefully prepared words. The door closed, and the room changed. Camilla wanted reassurance. Charles wanted accountability. What began as a controlled conversation became the most painful exchange of their marriage's public life, because for the first time, the king made clear that love would not erase the breach. Charles stood behind the small table for a moment before he sat down. He did not reach for her hand. He did not soften his voice to make the blow easier. The protocol breach, meaning the confirmed breaking of the royal rules that control order, rank, greetings, and public conduct, had now passed beyond private embarrassment. The state calendar, the official schedule of national ceremonies and diplomatic events attended by the royal family, would be changed immediately. That mattered because state events are not ordinary appearances. They show the country who represents the crown, who holds trust, and who can stand at the king's side when the world is watching. Camilla stared at him as if she had heard the words but refused to accept their meaning. "Do you understand what this will look like?" she asked, and her voice carried disbelief before anger. The Queen Consort knew removal from those events would not be seen as a simple adjustment. It would look like punishment. It would invite whispers. It would tell every courtier who had doubted her that the palace had finally found a reason to pull her back. Charles absorbed the question without flinching, but the wound reached him. He told Camilla the humiliation had not begun with the revised schedule. It began when protocol was ignored in front of guests, when an approved order was challenged, when staff were forced to choose between her instruction and his authority. The king spoke carefully, yet each word landed hard. He was not trying to shame her. He was trying to make her understand that the monarchy could not survive if personal pride looked stronger than royal discipline. Camilla pushed back with the pain of someone who felt abandoned at the very moment she expected defense. She reminded Charles of the years she had stood beside him, the judgment she had endured, the silence she had kept when the world made her a symbol of every old scandal. The queen consort said she should not be treated like a liability after giving so much of herself to his reign. For one brief second, the husband in him looked shaken. Charles picked up the pen beside the papers, then set it down with quiet finality. "The decision stands," he said. Nothing more was needed. Camilla rose before the conversation was finished, pride holding her together, as pain moved beneath it. She left him seated behind the table, and the king looked older than he had moments before. But while Camilla believed the worst had already happened, the machinery of the monarchy was only beginning to move against her. Royal power rarely moves loudly. It moves through calendars, guest lists, seating plans, briefing papers, and names quietly erased before dawn. Camilla's removal was not a single emotional decision. It became a controlled palace operation. Behind Charles's signature stood a network of officials who understood one brutal truth. If the crown tolerated a breach at state level, every future rule would look negotiable. Charles held the final authority, but the palace knew authority needed hands to carry it. The king could decide who represented him at state events, yet officials shaped the way that decision became reality. State events are formal national or diplomatic occasions, where royals represent the country, and their importance comes from what they signal to governments, guests, and the public. If Camilla remained beside him after the confirmed breach, the message would be dangerous. It would suggest that rank could survive without discipline, and that personal closeness to the monarch could weaken the rules everyone else was expected to obey. A senior courtier watched Camilla's name disappear from the attendance schedule and paused before confirming the change. His finger hovered over the final instruction because he understood the human cost hidden inside the official language. The attendance schedule, a private working list that shows which royals appear at each ceremony, was not just paperwork anymore. It was punishment made neat. It was consequence dressed as administration. The courtier had served long enough to know that a removed name could echo louder than a public rebuke. William received the briefing quietly. The prince did not speak at first, and that silence made the room tighten. The Lord Chamberlain's office, the royal department responsible for organizing ceremonial events and palace protocol, had treated the breach as a formal risk to order. Senior private secretaries, the trusted officials who manage royal decisions and daily duties, had agreed. William chose his words carefully and said the monarchy could not afford confusion at state level. The future king knew that one blurred rule today could become a broken standard tomorrow. Charles signed the revised event schedule with visible reluctance. The king looked firm, but not untouched. He understood that several future appearances now had to be reassigned, and every reassignment would shift attention inside the family. Camilla would lose visibility, others would gain it. That mattered, because visibility inside the monarchy is never empty. It becomes influence, trust, and public memory. Catherine's name appeared on one revised arrangement, and the room seemed to notice before anyone spoke. She had not asked for Camilla's place, but the change carried its own cruel meaning. The queen consort would see it as replacement, even if Charles saw only order. And when the revised list reached Camilla, the punishment stopped being theoretical. It became visible, personal, and impossible to deny. The first consequence came not with a speech, but with an empty place. A state rehearsal that should have included Camilla went forward without her. Her chair remained unused. Her folder was removed. Her staff received no further instructions. Inside the palace, absence became the loudest announcement of all, and Camilla understood that her removal was not symbolic. It had already begun. Camilla received the updated schedule in her private room and searched for the line that had always carried her name. It was gone. A formal state rehearsal, meaning a private practice for how royal figures move, stand, greet, and appear during major national or diplomatic events, had been set without her. That mattered, because these rehearsals create the public picture before the public ever sees it. If the queen consort was removed from rehearsal, then the palace was not simply delaying her. It was rebuilding the ceremony without her place in it. Camilla stared at the page until the missing space became more painful than any written sentence. She did not shout for an aide. She did not demand Charles. The queen consort folded the paper once, slowly, then placed it beside her as if the schedule itself could burn her fingers. Her silence carried humiliation, but also disbelief. For years, she had measured survival by presence. She had stood beside the king, entered rooms beside him, endured whispers beside him. Now the punishment was absence, and absence was colder than accusation. Charles attended the rehearsal alone. The king knew every courtier noticed the empty chair before they noticed him. State events depend on precision, because one wrong movement can suggest insult, confusion, or weakness to guests and governments watching the crown. Camilla's removal forced rapid changes in seating, movement, and presentation. But the deeper damage was emotional. Charles had protected order, yet every corrected step reminded him that the woman who should have stood beside him had been written out by his own command. William watched from the edge of the arrangement, quiet and unreadable. The prince understood that something had shifted beyond one rehearsal. The monarchy had entered a new phase of discipline, where personal closeness no longer guaranteed public trust. He did not look pleased. He looked alert. The future king knew that this was the lesson every official would carry forward. Rules were no longer soft when broken by someone near the throne. Camilla felt that lesson before anyone spoke it aloud. Charles felt it in the empty space beside him. William felt it in the tightened rhythm of the room. The palace moved on because it had to, but the family did not. Yet the true turning point did not happen in front of courtiers, officials, or cameras. It happened later, when Charles finally faced the woman behind the title. After the palace had acted, after the schedules had changed, after the machinery had done its work, Charles and Camilla were left with the silence underneath it all. This time there was no confrontation, no raised voices, no demand for reversal, just two people sitting in the aftermath of a decision that had protected the monarchy but injured the marriage at its center. Charles entered the room without papers in his hand. That mattered. No file, no revised schedule, no official note to hide behind. The crown, in simple terms, means the monarchy as an institution, the duty, authority, and public trust carried by the king beyond his private life. For hours, that institution had spoken through officials, calendars, and canceled appearances. Now the monarch had to speak as a husband, and Camilla had to listen as the woman who had lost more than a place on a list. Camilla sat across from him, no longer fighting the decision with anger. She looked tired in a way pride could not fully cover. The queen consort told Charles she felt exposed, replaced, and judged by people who had never truly accepted her. She said Catherine's name on one revised arrangement had hurt more than she expected, not because Catherine had done anything cruel, but because the change made the loss visible. It made Camilla feel as if the palace had found a cleaner, safer image to stand where she once stood. Charles did not answer quickly. The king looked saddened, not victorious. He told Camilla the removal was not meant to destroy her. It was meant to preserve the authority that allowed both of them to serve. Private duties, meaning lower-profile responsibilities away from major state ceremonies, could still continue. Lower-profile appearances could still be arranged. But state-level trust had to be rebuilt slowly, not demanded back through pain. Camilla heard the finality in his voice and understood the decision would not be reversed. Something in her shifted then. The queen consort did not forgive the humiliation, but she began to see the narrow path left to her. Dignity did not mean winning every room. Sometimes it meant surviving the room after power had been taken away. She had spent years fighting to be accepted beside Charles. Now she would have to prove she could step back without breaking. Charles reached for her hand only after the hardest words had been spoken. The gesture did not erase what had happened. It did not restore the state calendar. It did not heal the wound. But it reminded Camilla that the punishment had come from the king, not from hatred. By morning, the silence inside the palace had become a roar outside its gates, and the world began reading meaning into every empty space. The public did not need an official confession. They saw the absence. They saw Charles step forward without Camilla. They saw the altered formation, the careful smiles, the space where she should have stood. By sunrise, one image captured the national mood. A newspaper front page showing the king alone beneath the headline, "The empty chair beside the crown." Charles watched the morning broadcast without speaking. The king had known the removal would be noticed, but he had not expected it to become a symbol so quickly. A state rehearsal, meaning the private practice for formal royal movement before major national or diplomatic events, had never been meant to become public drama. Yet the image had escaped the palace walls. That mattered because the monarchy survives partly through control, and now control had slipped into headlines, debate, and public judgment. Camilla saw the front page in private, and the words cut deeper than the decision itself. The queen consort was no longer being discussed as a wife, a public figure, or even a woman under pressure. She had been reduced to absence. One empty chair had become the whole story. She folded the newspaper, but the damage stayed open. For years, she had fought to be seen beside Charles. Now the world was staring at the place where she was not. William's restraint became part of the story before he said a single word. Broadcasters framed the prince's silence as approval of stronger palace discipline, and commentators spoke of a monarchy preparing for a stricter future. Palace discipline, in plain terms, means the rules and limits that keep royal behavior controlled, so the institution does not look weak or confused. William understood why the public reading mattered. If people believed the crown had drawn a line, then every future decision would be measured against that line. A small crowd gathered near Buckingham Palace, watching the gates as if the next answer might appear there. Some spoke softly about Charles finally choosing order. Others wondered whether Camilla had been publicly wounded beyond repair. The crowd mattered because public feeling can turn a private punishment into a national verdict. The palace could change schedules behind closed doors, but it could not command what people felt when they saw the king standing alone. Charles felt that truth settled over him as the broadcast continued. The monarch had meant to protect authority, not create a public trial of his marriage. Camilla felt the same truth from the other side, knowing the world had turned her absence into proof. William saw the cost and the necessity at once. And when the noise finally settled, one truth remained. This was never only about one breached protocol. It was about the monarchy deciding what it could no longer excuse. In the end, Camilla's removal from state events became more than a palace penalty. It became a verdict. Charles had not abandoned her, but he had refused to shield her from consequence. Camilla had not vanished, but her role had been narrowed by the very rules she once believed she could bend. The monarchy survived the breach by making one painful truth unmistakably clear. Charles sat alone after the final briefing and closed the folder with a quiet hand. The king did not look victorious. He looked like a man who had paid for authority with something personal. Royal protocol, in simple terms, is the rule system that controls royal behavior, ceremony, rank, and public order, so the monarchy appears steady in front of the nation and the world. That mattered because protocol was not decoration. It was the frame holding the crown upright. Once Camilla broke it, Charles had to show that even the woman closest to him could not stand above it. Camilla stood at her dressing table and touched the formal event brooch she had once expected to wear beside him. The queen consort removed it slowly, not in defeat, but in recognition. Her place had changed. She remained part of the royal household, yet she was no longer untouched by consequence. For years, she had survived scandal, judgment, and doubt. But this was different. This was not the public refusing her. This was the institution itself limiting her. And that truth cut deeper than any headline. William accepted the decision with sadness, not triumph. The prince understood that Charles had done something painful but necessary for the future discipline of the crown. The future king knew the monarchy could not ask the public to respect rules that it would not enforce inside its own walls. Catherine understood that too. She did not step forward with victory. She remained quiet, steady, and careful, showing that dignity inside the royal family often comes from restraint rather than dominance. Charles rested his hand on the closed folder, as if accepting the cost of his own command. The monarch had protected the crown, but the protection had left a wound at the center of his marriage. Camilla had lost influence, but not all dignity. William had seen the standard set. Catherine had watched continuity hold. And the palace had learned that order, once challenged, must either be defended or abandoned. There is no further mystery to soften the impact. On that day, the crown did not choose comfort, loyalty, or silence. It chose discipline, and everyone inside the palace understood the price. The breach weakened Camilla's influence, strengthened Charles's authority, and reminded the monarchy that survival depends on order, even when order breaks the heart. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.